Behold, a secret Tenno combat art available to only a select few Warframes. The ability to lock enemies in time, in a state of perpetual agony where they'll suffer their wounds over and over again in an endless, recursive loop that will eventually tear their soul limb from limb in a matter of, well, it takes a long time to kill them, but in a matter of hours, they will be no more. My name is Zandypants, and I'm here to welcome you to a quick little tutorial on status duration pausing, a bizarre side effect of abilities that pause an enemy's state, like Atlas's Petrify, as you just saw. Basically what happens here, something, the state of the enemy gets paused, and if they already have a damage over time effect on them, like a slash proc, it just gets extended for the entire duration of the pause. So if you petrify an enemy that is bleeding from a slash proc, they just bleed the whole time, and then when the effect ends, the slash proc resumes its normal duration. Which is obviously very powerful, because it means that you can extend the duration of an individual slash proc for a very, very long time. Atlas's Petrify with max duration lasts a minute. That's a lot of slash proc duration. Again, essentially any Warframe powers that encase enemies in a substance are likely to do this. So for Atlas, it'll be his Petrify, his Rumblers now petrify when you summon them, and his Augmented Landslide leaves a petrification trail. All those things will work. Frost can also do this with his Avalanche, his Freeze, and the augment for his Snow Globe that will sometimes freeze enemies when they enter it. And finally, Gara can do it with her Mass Vitrify. When this covers enemies with Molten Glass and it eventually hardens, that will pause the duration of status effects. Applying this principle in combat can be rather simple. All you need to do is put some slash procs on your enemies, and then wait, and they'll eventually die. You just have to make sure that that's okay. For example, in an interception mission, this is not a great idea because you need the enemies to be off of the point. You can't just pause them and then wait for them to die because they'll be capping the point while they're there. But on most mission types, it's perfectly alright to not actually kill the enemy. As long as you're assured they'll eventually die and they've been neutralized as a threat, it's basically as good as killing them. For example, all of these enemies are no longer a meaningful threat to anybody else in the map, so all I have to do is wait for them to die, and because I'm playing Gara, I can just wait inside my wall, nobody can hurt me, and I'll just wait for the enemies to die and then move on with my life. Just to clarify, you don't need any particular mods to do this, except where an augment for an ability, like some of the ones I mentioned, will cause status pausing. It's not like you need to mod for anything in particular, although duration and range are generally what you're going to want to go for. Your principal concern is not so much how to build for this status pausing effect, but like how to apply the slash procs that are going to kill the enemies. It does also work with like gas, toxin, heat, I suppose, procs, but I don't really recommend that because they don't ignore armor, so you will still get lots of numbers, but not actually lots of actual damage. It is kind of nice to watch all the numbers pop up, but this isn't killing these enemies anytime soon, you know? No, clearly the productive thing to do here is to use Relentless Combination. Here's an Atarax build that I designed specifically for use with status duration pausing that does not use Maiming Strike, but creates similar amounts of damage to Maiming Strike by quickly scaling up the combo counter with Relentless Combination, Weeping Wounds, Prime Breach, and status duration pausing. Since Relentless Combination gives you a combo counter tick every time a slash proc deals damage, and we're pausing the duration of status procs, meaning your slash will just tick for damage over and over and over again for the duration of your crowd control effect, you get a pretty high combo counter. From a completely cold start, you can see that just by attacking a couple of times against these enemies and tagging them with slash procs, I can then freeze their status duration and wait for them to keep bleeding, which will continue to gain me combo counter, as you can see in the bottom right corner. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that these enemies over here actually had their slash procs run out before I froze them. What you need to keep in mind about this tactic is, like, yes, you're freezing the duration of slash procs, but they still have a duration. It's just not ticking down. So oftentimes you'll slash proc them and then you try to freeze them, but you weren't fast enough. They don't even have a slash proc. That's one reason that Gara is not the best for this, whereas Frost's Avalanche is a much more upfront and large area status proc freeze, which is very, very useful for this purpose, and as you can see is much more elegant. You're much less likely to lose some of your slash procs, and you'll get your combo counter nice and easy. And then you can go do whatever you want. You can take back out your primary weapon and start killing other enemies while those enemies are frozen in your slash effects, and then when you go back to your Atarax, you'll have a huge combo counter built up, and you can murder a bunch of other enemies with it. Ooh baby, 1,163 combo counter hits, huh? Sure didn't feel like that to me. You know, really the only negative thing I have to say about status duration pausing, as cool, interesting, whatever as it is that I'm not really sure whether it's intentional or not. It doesn't really seem intentional. I feel as though, thinking about it from a coding perspective, they were just like a little bit lazy, not to be mean, DE, but it does seem a little bit lazy to just pause the state of the enemy, which just like inadvertently pauses the status effect, and if they implemented it more thoroughly, then it wouldn't pause the status effect. So I don't know about this one. Like, it's been in the game for a long time, and it's really obscure, and it doesn't... Anyway, just be warned. Incidentally, here's my Baza build if anyone was looking for it. This is actually my normal Baza build, and unfortunately it doesn't have space for Vigilante armaments, which would be a pretty nice gain, but it's not as good as having Argon Scope for hunter munitions consistency, so go figure. Thank you all very much for watching. Subscribe if you had a good time, and check me out elsewhere on the internet in the description of this video. I hope to see you all next time.